What if the king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna, was never sealed 1,000 years ago? That would be a crazy story to look at, right? Now imagine a world where Sukuna remained free. What would that actually entail? The fact is, if he was never sealed, the Jujutsu world as we know it would have drastic changes, and here is how. One thing is for sure, Gojo's skincare routine wouldn't be that flawless. In this alternate timeline, Sukuna's unchecked power would have rewritten the story of Jujutsu Kaisen as we know it, from the Heian era to the modern day. His presence would have been a constant, looming threat, or perhaps even a tyrannical ruler. During the golden age of Jujutsu, Sukuna was a sorcerer so feared and revered that even after his death, his cursed energy was so immense that it transformed him into a cursed spirit. His 20 fingers, infused with his power, became cursed objects that could resurrect him if consumed. In the original timeline, Sukuna was eventually sealed away, his fingers scattered across Japan, waiting for the day someone would foolishly unleash him again. According to JJK lore, he was at the height of his power. Without the sealing, Sukuna's power would have continued to grow. He was already a force of nature, capable of decimating entire armies with a single flick of his finger. But over time, his mastery of cursed energy and reverse curse technique would have reached unimaginable levels. Imagine a Sukuna who wasn't just a cursed spirit, but a living, evolving entity, constantly refining his techniques and expanding his influence. According to the manga, upon his death, Sukuna sealed himself as a cursed object so he would be able to come back. Imagine that he didn't die. His freedom wouldn't have gone unchallenged. The Heian era was home to some of the most powerful sorcerers in history, including the legendary Six Eyes users and the Star Plasma vessel. In this alternate timeline, these sorcerers would have been forced to confront Sukuna head-on. The battles would have been epic, with entire landscapes being reshaped by the sheer force of their cursed energy. One of the most intriguing possibilities is Sukuna's relationship with the Six Eyes users. In the original timeline, the Six Eyes and the Star Plasma vessel were tied to Tengen's immortality, but with Sukuna running rampant, their focus would have shifted entirely to stopping him. Imagine a young Six Eyes user, not yet at their full potential, facing off against Sukuna in a desperate bid to protect their world. The outcome of such a battle could have changed the course of history. Sukuna's ability is already one of the most devastating techniques in Jujutsu Kaisen, but in this timeline, it would have become even more terrifying. Without the need to conserve his energy or fear being sealed, Sukuna would have used his entire arsenal freely, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Entire cities would have been reduced to rubble, and the balance between sorcerers and curses would have been irrevocably altered. But Sukuna wasn't just a mindless destroyer. He was a cunning strategist, capable of forming alliances and manipulating those around him. In this timeline, it's possible that Sukuna would have gathered his own faction of followers, much like Kenjaku did in the original story. These followers, drawn to his power and charisma, would have helped him consolidate his rule, creating a dark empire that stretched across Japan. One of the most interesting figures in this alternate timeline would be Urame, Sukuna's loyal servant. In the original story, Urame played a key role in Sukuna's resurrection, but here, they would have been by Sukuna's side from the beginning, aiding him in his conquest and ensuring his dominance. Urame's ice-based curse techniques would have made them a formidable ally, capable of taking on even the strongest sorcerers. Of these factions that would inevitably form, one side would have those who believed in opposing Sukuna, desperate to preserve humanity and prevent sorcery from becoming a tool of his will. These sorcerers would train relentlessly, developing new cursed tools and techniques, each generation hoping to succeed where the last failed. The Gojo clan, known for its limitless curse technique and the Six Eyes, would likely become the most prominent opposition, with each new heir bearing the weight of confronting Sukuna. On the other side, you'd have the ones who bent the knee. Power attracts power. Many sorcerers and cursed spirits alike would flock to Sukuna, seeking to bask in his might. Some would become loyal followers, creating a cult-like hierarchy around him. Sorcerers wouldn't just fear curses, they'd fear other humans. The lines between friend and foe would blur, and trust would become a rare commodity. As for Sukuna himself, he wouldn't simply sit on a throne. Sukuna thrives in chaos. His existence would be a constant reminder of the fragile line between life and death. To him, sorcerers were either worthy prey or amusement. The idea of rulership wouldn't mean order, it would mean terror. His very presence would twist the concept of power, warping it into a game where only the strongest could even hope to survive. The existence of an unsealed Sukuna wouldn't just create fear, it would force evolution. The art of Jujutsu would grow into something entirely different. In a world where the king of curses freely roamed, sorcerers wouldn't train to fight curses, they trained to fight him. From the very moment a child displayed cursed energy, their training training would begin. The techniques we know today, domain expansions, black flash, reverse curse technique, would be pushed to their limits. Imagine a world where reverse curse technique wasn't just a skill but a requirement for survival. Those who couldn't learn it wouldn't last long. Jujutsu High, if it even existed, would be unrecognizable. In this timeline, it wouldn't be a school, it would be a war camp. Lessons wouldn't be about exercising curses, they'd be about survival tactics, ambush strategies, and how to avoid getting slaughtered by the king of curses. And one of the clans, Zenin clan, already obsessed with strength, would double down on their pursuit of perfection. The Gojo clan's 6 eyes users would be trained from birth, seen as the last line of defense against Sukuna. Even the Kamo clan, infamous for their twisted experiments, would likely dive deeper into forbidden practices, all in the hope of creating a sorcerer strong enough to rival him. But beyond the evolution of curse techniques and combat strategies, there would be a more subtle shift, a shift in mentality. Sorcerers wouldn't be protectors, they'd be survivors. The concept of morality would blur. In a world where Sukuna's shadow loomed over everything, power would become the ultimate currency. Alliances wouldn't be forged out of trust but out of necessity. Betrayal would be as common as breathing. Cursed tools would become more advanced, forged with the sole purpose of piercing Sukuna's defenses. Perhaps new forms of cursed energy manipulation would emerge, techniques designed to counteract his malevolent shrine or disrupt his dismantle and cleave. Entire bloodlines would be bred for this singular purpose, their only goal to produce a sorcerer who could stand toe-to-toe with the king of curses. But even then, would it be enough? Psychological impact on sorcerers would be profound. Living under constant threat breeds paranoia. Trust would erode. Sorcerers wouldn't form teams, they'd form temporary alliances, always watching their backs. The world of Jujutsu would become a battlefield where the strong preyed on the weak and only the most ruthless survived. And through it all, Sukuna would watch, unchallenged, unstoppable. The king of curses, shaping the world not through conquest, but through fear. Yet, even in the darkest timeline, humanity has always been stubborn. In the face of overwhelming power, there would still be those who fought back. Not for glory, not for honor, but because they refused to let the world belong to a monster. In the original timeline, curses are born from negative emotions. But with Sukuna free, their numbers and strength would have skyrocketed. Sukuna's presence alone would have amplified the fear and hatred in the world, creating curses more powerful and destructive than ever before. These curses, drawn to Sukuna's immense curse energy, would have become his foot soldiers, spreading chaos and destruction wherever they went. For a Jujutsu society, this would have meant a never-ending war against curses. Sorcerers would have been forced to band together, forming larger and more organized groups to combat the threat. The concept of Jujutsu schools, like Tokyo Jujutsu High, might have emerged much earlier as a way to train the next generation of sorcerers in a world where survival was never guaranteed. As the years passed, Sukuna's legend would have only grown. He would have become a boogeyman, a name whispered in fear by sorcerers and curses alike. The Heian era, already a time of chaos and conflict, would have been defined by Sukuna's reign. But even the king of curses would have faced challenges. The question is, could anyone have stopped him? By the end of the Heian era, thousands of sorcerers would have fallen, while others have risen to the occasion, pushing their curse techniques to new heights in a bid to defeat Sukuna. But whether they succeeded or failed, one thing is certain: the world would never be the same. And so, the Heian era would have ended not with the sealing of Sukuna, but with his complete and utter domination. The stage would have been set for a very different future, one where Sukuna was the king of the world. His influence would hover over every aspect of the Jujutsu world. But what would that future look like? How would the modern era have been shaped by Sukuna's unending reign? That's a story for another time. With Sukuna's unchecked reign during the Heian era, the very fabric of Jujutsu society would have been reshaped. The balance between sorcerers and curses, the structure of clans, and even the development of curse techniques would have been influenced by the constant presence of the king of curses. In this alternate timeline, Jujutsu society wouldn't just evolve, it would adapt to survive under Sukuna's shadow. In the original timeline, Sukuna died and then turned into a cursed spirit. But for our timeline to exist, his longevity can be explained through two compelling theories: his hyper-advanced mastery of reverse curse technique, or his transformation into a curse-like entity, similar to Tengen. Reverse curse technique is one of the most advanced and rare abilities in the Jujutsu world, allowing users to heal themselves and others by reversing the flow of curse energy. Sukuna's mastery of this technique could explain his ability to live for centuries. His control over reverse curse technique is so refined that he can regenerate his body almost instantaneously, even from fatal injuries. This ability not only makes him nearly invincible in battle, but also allows him to slow down the aging process, effectively granting him immortality. Another explanation for Sukuna's longevity is that he has become a curse-like entity, similar to Tengen. This transformation will allow him to exist outside the normal boundaries of human life, but it would also come with its own set of limitations and requirements. environments. Like Tengen, Sukuna might require vessels to maintain his human form across the centuries. These vessels would serve as containers for his immense cursed energy, allowing him to exist in the physical world. However, unlike Tengen, who seeks compatible vessels to maintain stability, Sukuna's vessels are likely chosen for their strength and potential to withstand his power. But personally, my money's on the first theory, as it would grant him more power. Next, let's talk about Territory. In the original timeline, Jujutsu Society was divided among various clans and factions, each with their own traditions and techniques. But with Sukuna free, much of Japan would have fallen under his control. Entire regions would have been reduced to wastelands, forcing sorcerers to either flee or submit to his rule. Anime lover boy here, mid-editing. I just wanted to pause the video and ask you to subscribe if you like this kind of video. And while you're down there, why not leave a like as well? Fast forward to the modern era, and the world is a very different place. Sukuna's influence has shaped every aspect of society, from the way cursed energy is used to the very structure of government. In this timeline, Sukuna isn't just a cursed spirit, he's a ruler, a tyrant, and a living legend, and his presence has left an indelible mark on the world. In this alternate timeline, let's assume some of the same characters are still born into the story. By now, Sukuna would have established himself as the de facto ruler of not just Japan. Sukuna's influence extends far beyond. Over the centuries, he would have expanded his domain across the world, establishing himself as the undisputed ruler of the cursed world. His main capital remains in Japan, the heart of his empire, but his reach extends to every corner of the globe. To maintain control over a vast territory, Sukuna delegates his power to a network of cursed generals, each tasked with ruling a specific region in his name. He would have recruited sorcerers like Rame and Kajaku as generals to his cause. Furthermore, sorcerers like Yorozu, a powerful sorcerer who was obsessed with Sukuna in our timeline, would have certainly joined his ranks. She wanted to prove her strength to him. Yorozu is a construction type of cursed user. Her technique allows her to create weapons from thin air. Or sorcerers like Takako, a sorcerer with space manipulation. He would have recruited others like Kashimo, an electricity user, and Ryu, a sorcerer that was known for his immense destructive techniques. All of these sorcerers were very powerful during the Heian era. In the original timeline, they were resurrected by Kenjaku to take part in the Culling Games, but in our timeline, they would have been part of his generals or formed strong oppositions against him. His immense power and control over curses would have made him untouchable, even by modern standards. Governments and corporations would have been forced to bow to his will, using their resources to further his goals. The line between sorcerers and curses would have blurred, as Sukuna's influence seeped into every corner of society. But even in this dark world, there would have been hope. Sorcerers like Gojo Satoru, born with immense potential, would have risen to challenge Sukuna. In the original timeline, Gojo is known as the strongest sorcerer, but here, his role would have been even more critical. Imagine a young Gojo growing up in a world where Sukuna's shadow looms over everything, training not just to protect his loved ones, but to overthrow a tyrant. A battle between Gojo and Sukuna would have been the stuff of legend. Gojo's limitless technique and six eyes would have made him one of the few people capable of standing up to Sukuna, but even he would have struggled. Sukuna's centuries of experience and mastery of cursed energy would have made him a nearly insurmountable opponent. But if anyone could have done it, it would have been Gojo. And then there's Geto Suguru. In the original timeline, Geto's disillusionment with Jujutsu Society led him down a dark path. But in this world, his story might have been very different. Faced with the overwhelming threat of Sukuna, Geto could have become a revolutionary, leading a rebellion against Sukuna's rule. His ability to control curses would have made him a valuable asset, but it also would have put him at risk of falling under Sukuna's influence. Yuta Akatsuki, another powerful sorcerer, would have also played a key role. In this timeline, Yuta's journey would have been shaped by the constant threat of Sukuna. His connection to Rika, his immense cursed energy, and his determination to protect others would have made him a symbol of hope in a world dominated by fear. But even with these powerful sorcerers, the question remains, could anyone have stopped Sukuna? In this timeline, Sukuna's power would have been at its peak, his influence reaching every corner of the world. The final battle against him would have been a desperate all-out war, with sorcerers and curses alike joining forces to take him down, and the outcome would have shaped the future of the Jujutsu world forever. Even with all the preparations and Sukuna being revived in the current timeline, he was still able to defeat every single one of the obstacles in front of him. A Sukuna with 1,000+ years of experience and honing and mastery of cursed energy will be a fully formed god. The modern era in this alternate timeline would have been defined by one thing: the struggle against Sukuna. Every decision, every battle, every life would have been shaped by his presence. Let's move on to how Sukuna's presence affects Yuji. In the original timeline, Yuji Itadori's life changed forever when he encountered one of Sukuna's cursed fingers. But in a world where Sukuna was never sealed, Yuji's story would have been very different. Without the cursed fingers scattered across Japan, Yuji might have never become a Jujutsu sorcerer, but that doesn't mean he would have been safe from Sukuna's influence. Yuji Itadori is no ordinary person. Even without cursed energy, he possesses incredible physical strength, agility, and a strong sense of justice. These traits make him a natural-born fighter, someone who would have stood out even in a world dominated by Sukuna. But in this timeline, Yuji's path would have been shaped by the constant presence of the King of Curses. Imagine a young Yuji living in a world where curses are more powerful and numerous than ever before. One day, while hanging out with his friends, he encounters a curse, a monstrous creation born from the fear and despair that Sukuna's reign has spread. Without any knowledge of Jujutsu, Yuji would have been helpless to stop it. This moment of powerlessness could have been the catalyst for his journey into the world of curses and sorcery. Or, Yuji's natural talent would have caught the attention of a wandering sorcerer. This mentor, perhaps a survivor of Sukuna's conquest, would have taken Yuji under their wing, teaching him the basics of cursed energy and combat. Yuji's journey would have been one of self-discovery, as he learned to harness his strength and protect those he cares about. Even without Sukuna inside of him, his path wouldn't have been easy. In a world where Sukuna's influence is everywhere, every battle would have been a fight for survival. Yuji's kind heart and strong moral compass would have set him apart from other sorcerers, making him a beacon of hope in a dark world. But it would also made him a target, both for curses and for those who serve Sukuna. Compared to what we know, without the cursed fingers, Yuji wouldn't have been a vessel, but that doesn't mean Sukuna wouldn't have taken an interest in him. Sukuna is a being who values strength and ambition above all else. In Yuji, he might have seen a kindred spirit, someone with the potential to rise above the limitations and challenge the status quo. Sukuna could have offered Yuji power, tempting him with the ability to protect his friends and change the world. Yuji's greatest strength has always been his humanity. Even in the face of overwhelming power, he would have chosen to remain true to himself. This rejection would have made him a thorn in Sukuna's side, a symbol of resistance in a world that had long since bowed to the King of Curses, and it would have set the stage for an epic confrontation between the two. A battle between Yuji and Sukuna would have been the culmination of everything this alternate timeline represents. On one side, Sukuna, the embodiment of power and domination. On the other hand, Yuji, the embodiment of hope and humanity. Their clash would have been more than just a fight. It would have been a battle for the soul of the Jujutsu world. In the end, Yuji's fate would have been shaped by his choices. Whether he emerged victorious or fell in battle, his legacy would have inspired others to stand up against Sukuna's tyranny. And in a world defined by darkness, that spark of hope would have been more valuable than any cursed technique. Perhaps Yuji would still inherit Sukuna's power in some twisted fashion. Or maybe another sorcerer, desperate to turn the tide, would attempt to bind Sukuna to a human vessel, a last-ditch effort to control the uncontrollable. The existence of Sukuna's fingers in the original timeline implied that someone, at some point, believed sealing his power was possible. In this timeline, those same sorcerers might try to create a weapon instead. And what of Megami Fushiguro? In a world ruled by Sukuna, Megami's 10 Shadows technique would become a symbol of hope or a curse. Zenin clan would push him harder, treating him not as a sorcerer, but as a living weapon. His relationship with Yuji, once built on mutual trust and understanding, might instead become a bitter rivalry, each seeing the other as a means to an end. Throughout this alternate timeline, one question looms large. What is Sukuna's ultimate goal? In the original story, Sukuna's motivations are shrouded in mystery, but in this world, his ambitions would have been clear. Sukuna isn't just a curse, he's a conqueror, a tyrant, and a being who thrives on chaos and destruction. His ultimate goal would have been nothing less than complete domination. Sukuna's power is unmatched, but it's not just about strength. He's a master strategist, someone who understands the value of fear and manipulation. Sukuna would have used his power to bend the world to his will, creating a society where he was the undisputed ruler, a place where his word was law, and disobedience was met with instant death. But despite his solid reign, Sukuna would have faced challenges. Sorcerers like Gojo Satoru and Yuta Akatsu, born with immense potential, would have been thorns in his side. A battle between Sukuna and these powerful sorcerers would have been a clash of titans, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. And while Sukuna's power would have given him the upper hand, his arrogance and love for chaos could have been his downfall. He has been reigning for 1,000 years, and based on Sukuna's character, he is bored, without a challenge. Sukuna's greatest weakness has always been his ego. He thrives on challenge and conflict, often toying with his opponents rather than finishing them off. In a final battle against the combined forces of sorcerers and curses, this arrogance could have been his undoing. Imagine a scenario where Sukuna, confident in his victory, is caught off guard by a well-coordinated attack, leaving him vulnerable for the first time in centuries. The endgame of this alternate timeline would have been a desperate all-out war against Sukuna. Sorcerers and curses alike would have been forced forced to set aside their differences and work together, united by a common goal to take down the King of Curses. And in the end, it would have been a battle not just of strength, but of willpower and determination. His generals would also pose a dangerous threat, but without Sukuna, they would fall subsequently. Even in defeat, Sukuna would have left a lasting impact. His reign of terror would have shaped the world in ways that could have never be undone. But his downfall would have also been a turning point, a chance for the Jujutsu world to rebuild and create a better future. And in that future, the legacy of those who stood against him, Yuji, Gojo, Yuta, and countless others, would have been remembered as a symbol of hope and resilience. In the end, Sukuna's freedom would have reshaped the world, but it would have also brought out the best in those who opposed him. If Sukuna was never sealed 1,000 years ago, the Jujutsu world would have been irredeemably fractured, and the effects will transcend an extra 1,000 years. That's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments. Do you think the world would change that much if Sukuna was never sealed? See you in the next video.